Here are all of the Pokemon leaks explained in 18 minutes. Recently, an unnamed hacker broke into the Pokemon database and uncovered thousands and thousands of files. So here is every major leak explained. First off, we have Pokemon Gaia. One leak reveals exciting details about Generation 10 of Pokemon, which is currently under development under the codename Gaia. This new generation is significant because it might be released in two versions similar to previous generations. However, what's notable is that it could launch on the Switch 1 and the upcoming Nintendo Switch 2, which is codenamed Ounce in the leaks. Now, Gaia appears to have a theme centered around Earth or nature, reflecting its codename, and people don't know which legendary they're going to use, or if they're going to create a new legendary. It has been theorized that they're going to use Regigigas, however. After this, we have the Typhlosion leak. Now, one of the more controversial leaked myths involves Typhlosion, and it portrays Typhlosion as a deceptive figure from Japanese folklore. And this narrative, which just consists of a text document, tells a tragic tale of manipulation of a young woman and the resulting consequences, where Typhlosion basically gets into a relationship with a woman, tricks her into having a child with him, and it gets really weird from there. I understand why Nintendo never wanted this to be revealed, but I don't understand why they have it in the first place. Also, this isn't the only one. They have a story about an Octillery having relations with a human, and also a Slacking doing the same thing. So these are definitely weird, and it's not perfectly clear what Nintendo intended to do with these. After this, we have some early footage from HeartGold and SoulSilver, depicting Pokemon gyms featuring unique exteriors that reflect their types, which also enhance their design. For example, they have different colors and slightly different designs depending on the type matchup of the gym. However, it appears Nintendo decided to get rid of them. After this, we have an X and Y scrap diving mechanic. This image shows Pokemon X and Y originally having a diving mechanic that would allow players to explore underwater environments, similar to previous games. Now, this feature was obviously cut from the final game, limiting the aquatic experience to just surfing, but it looks pretty cool. Next up is some untranslated footage of N's Castle in early development. So in the late beta version of Pokemon Black, N's Castle featured a much more weird design than it normally does. And also this footage shows you the early stages of fighting both Zekrom and Reshiram as they were still in development. This is a pretty cool thing to see as it shows us how Nintendo develops their environments and their Pokemon battles. Next up is the Black and White 2 Abyssal Ruins. Now in Pokemon Black and White 2, the Abyssal Ruins contained a lot of mysterious hieroglyphs that remain undiscovered to this day. These inscriptions are believed to reference ancient Pokemon myths and potentially hint at the origins of some legendary Pokemon. However, no one really knows their true meanings until now, where essentially the Abyssal Ruins facts have been revealed. Basically, the inscriptions are talking about a Sea King fighting off enemies and being worshipped. Next up is a potential Kalos map found in 2012. Now this map of the Kalos region, discovered in a 2012 build of Pokemon X and Y, showcases a previously unseen area known as South Kalos. This early concept suggests that Game Freak has ambitious plans for the region, maybe including additional cities, routes, and landmarks that were scrapped from the game ultimately. And this still ignites curiosity though. What were they planning to do with these areas? Do they have any future plans to include this in the games? After this, we have Proto-Pokemon with a random evolution. Now, this concept art shows a prototype Pokemon, which has a unique mechanic of randomly evolving into any Pokemon. This is an interesting concept, and it shows Game Freak's early creativity, where they imagined a Pokemon who randomly just evolves into any different Pokemon. It could give you a really good Pokemon or a bad one. However, they ultimately scrapped it because it might have been too overpowered or for different reasons. After this, we have some leaked Gen 3 sprites. Now, the recent leak of all the Gen 3 Pokemon sprites, both front and back, has revealed some unusual designs that weren't included in the final games. Among these sprites, fans have spotted strange interpretations and concepts for certain Pokemon. Try to pause the video and see if you can find some weird ones among these Gen 3 sprites. Next up is Pokemon X and Y early prototype. So the second part of the X and Y leaks uncovers more insight into the game's development, showing, early mechanics, early gameplay, and screenshots like this. We also have Rapidash's backstory. Now, like the backstories I mentioned before, there was a story revealed where a man marries a Rapidash, forming an unconventional bond with it, and then it takes a darker turn when the man kills the Rapidash's ex-husband and then marries it. This is pretty dark and twisted coming from Game Freak, and it really shows how disturbing some of their content is. After this, we have an early balloon minigame from X and Y. Now, an early intriguing beta feature for Pokemon X and Y shows a balloon minigame titled Mysterious Shadow Pokemon. This minigame allows players to interact with shadowy figures and just play around with some mechanic, I guess. I don't know. There's not a lot of information about this apart from the screenshots. We also have X and Y early music and placeholder models. So if you watch this leak clip, it shows the early stages in the development of X and Y where they had different music, and instead of having actual Pokemon, they literally just had a white screen with an image of a Pokemon. And this is kind of interesting to see because it shows the process of how Game Freak develops Pokemon games. Next up is finning Sharpedos. Now, the concept of Sharpedo finning was largely fictional, and there was some fan art about it, but it actually has been confirmed by Game Freak. In this scenario, which was found in a file from Game Freak, Sharpedo is basically hunted for its fins in a story about economic exploitation and how people eat shark fin soup. And it has a lot of discussion about issues like sustainability and conservation of natural land and hunting, and it's kind of weird why Game Freak had this in their files. Next up, we have a confirmation of Mega Jinx. Now, another leak confirmed basically the existence of Mega Jinx. Nintendo were originally planning to have a Mega Stone, and Jinx would be able to Mega Evolve. However, they did scrap it, but we do have an image and a model of this. After this, we have early models of Volcanion, Hawlucha, and Klefki. Now, these three models are pretty interesting. They show Volcanion, Hawlucha, and Klefki in their original coloring, and it's all pretty different from what it is now. We really don't know what changed in Game Freak's designs for them, what made them change the designs. After this, we have the early designs for the Kalos protagonists. So Caleb and Serena, the Kalos protagonists, had slightly different designs in the beginning. Look at their hair, for example. Look at their clothes, for example. Although they're largely the same, they are slightly different, and Serena, for example, has much more blonde hair than the kind of brownish hair she has in the game. After this, let's go back to the text files. Now, here's a leak called The Collapse of Culture and Relationships. This is a narrative story about a man engaging in explicit interactions with an octillery he discovers on the beach, only to throw the octillery back into the ocean after he's done with it. And it continues on to octillery visiting him in a dream, expressing that it wants to take part in those acts and revealing that it won't return. Anyway, this stuff is really weird, and I don't know why Game Freak would include it in their games. Next up is the X and Y test map. So this leaked map shows unrefined areas and mechanics that were either modified or changed before the final release, and this basically shows the early development map of Pokemon X and Y. After this is the Pokemon Black and White early footage. Now, basically this screenshot shows you what the original Pokemon Black and White development stages looked like. For some weird reason, there's 4 Pokemon centers surrounding this guy, but it is pretty interesting. Next up, we have Pokemon Bible leak, Genesis 1-1. So apparently the Bible is canon in the Pokemon universe, and this leak shows the existence of the first verse, Genesis 1-1, and the idea of original sin and the origin of humans and Pokemon. We also have the model for the original Metagross, which is much scarier and much more terrifying than normal Metagross is. And I'm kind of glad they changed Metagross into a more decent looking Pokemon, because this is the stuff of nightmares. Next up, we have Beta Simisear and Simipour. The leak reveals early designs of Simisear and Simipour. Obviously, Simisear is much fatter and rounder. Simipour looks slightly taller. After this, we have the multiplayer Pokemon game. Now, we don't have footage for this one, but basically the gist of it is Nintendo are developing a multiplayer Pokemon game, which is codenamed Synapse, and it steers away from traditional turn-based mechanics into real-time action-oriented battles featuring Pokemon like Charizard, and you're able to essentially directly control them in team-based scenarios like Splatoon or Overwatch. This shift in gameplay is interesting, and it might make Pokemon soar to new limits in terms of their market reach. There's also a lot of beta content from HeartGold and SoulSilver and Black and White too. These images contain early game builds, unused sprites, and even fragments of code that never made it into the final versions. And for developers and fans alike, these are all interesting images. In the leaks, we were also revealed the map editor for Gen 3. This is one of the more exciting discoveries because this leak is the official map editor utilized by Game Freak to create the map environments for the 3rd generation games, including Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Previously, this was kept under wraps, but now that it has been revealed, maybe this will lead to people developing their own games with the actual official map editor. How cool would that be? We also have the beta character designs for HeartGold and SoulSilver. So here are images of Ethan and Lyra from HeartGold and SoulSilver, the 2 protagonists, and their early development stages. Now, there's also some other sprites such as Team Galactic's Jupiter, which has an early design slightly different than her design today, sparking discussions about maybe what could have changed in their design or thought process. No one really knows. There was also a leak containing unused music tracks. Now, I can't play these for obvious reasons, but if you search it up, you can get access to these and actually listen to music tracks, even though they were never put into the game. Now, the next set of leaked files deals with an interesting idea: scrap Pokemon sprites, original designs that were scrapped for later, newer models of Pokemon. Let's go through these rapid fire. First, we have a scrap design for Rotom. We have another one for Honchkrow. Here's a scrap design for Shaman. Here's one of the older designs for Licky Licky. Here's one of the designs for Skunk Tank. This is an early design of Giratina. This is what Reshiram and Zekrom looked like. These are the Swords of Justice, Cobalion, Terrakion, and Virizion. Here's an early design of Hydreigon. Here is an early design of Beartic. This is what one of the original models of Escavalier looked like. Here is one for Hariyama. Here's one for Kyurem. Here's the early design for Meloetta. And of course, Tynamo. Here's a leaked image of what Conkeldurr was supposed to look like. Now, those were a lot of early designs. Obviously, not all of them, as a huge number were released, but this kind of shows you the general idea of how many earlier designs there were and how different they are from the actual Pokemon designs we know and love today. After this, we have a lot more leaks about the games. The next set of leaks kind of revolve around new Pokemon games that are going to be released soon, so we'll cover those. Pokemon Legends ZA. Now, this was recently announced by Game Freak after the fact it was leaked, but Pokemon Legends ZA is set to once again take place in the Kalos region. Apparently, the whole game is supposed to be in the city of Lumiose, not going outside of the city wall, so it'll be interesting how that develops. It's supposed to be exactly like Pokemon Legends Arceus in the gameplay and general workings of the game, and it's currently in development. Next up is Project Bauer. Project Bauer is obviously a codename. It's the codename for the 24th Pokemon movie. It's faced delays since 2021 with its current status unclear. The film actually intends to reboot the Pokemon universe with new protagonists set in Kanto, featuring the original 151 Pokemon, with Mew as the main mythical character of the movie. Another leak was about Project Reload. Now, this is the codename for a new anime series about Pokemon, consisting of 12 episodes. It's to be animated by the studio Colorado, and its current status is unknown, but apparently it's supposed to be a reboot to the Pokemon franchise. We also have a leak about The Great Detective Pikachu. Now, this is a sequel to the original Detective Pikachu movie, in development since 2021. It's directed by Jordan Vogt-Roberts instead of Paul Letterman. Now, the status is uncertain, but fans are hopeful for updates on the continuation of Pikachu's story. Finally, to conclude this section, we have Project Discovery. This is an upcoming Netflix live-action series with 8 episodes planned for the first season. Now, this is going to be a live-action Pokemon series with basically CGI Pokemon, I guess. Now, details are limited about this, but the adaptation aims to explore the Pokemon universe from a live-action perspective. This is going to be interesting, how it's received, how it goes down, if it's a success, if it's a failure. Now, the next section is once again mostly visual leaks with actual pictures or images. First, we have a picture of a mythology layout created by Junichi Matsuda, revealing a hierarchy among legendary Pokemon, suggesting that there's actually a cosmology to the Pokemon world, that there is a mythology. And this image sort of indicates Arceus is at the center with Palkia and Dialga beside him, and then Uxie, Mesprit, and Azelf around them. And it sort of aligns with all the fan theories about how the Pokemon universe was created, with Groudon creating the land and Rayquaza creating the air and Kyogre creating the water, and how everything was normally perceived, basically. The next leak is of the Sinnoh water route. Now these leaks suggest that Sinnoh originally included a water route designed to connect various land masses, but eventually was scrapped for unknown reasons. We also have an early map of the Hoenn region. Now this map reveals a rough, undeveloped version of the landscape with certain holes in it which haven't been developed yet. Now this glimpse into the early stages of Ruby and Sapphire sort of shows how much the region evolved, how much it truly developed before release. You can see many major towns and maps on here. The next leak is the heights of different characters. Now I want you to take particular focus on AZ, which is the tallest one. He's around 10 feet tall. But something weird about this is that even though you're supposed to be 10 years old, you're almost as tall as your dad, and you're almost as tall as the adult gym leaders. After this, we have the leaked beta stages of Pokémon Tournament. Now, Pokémon Tournament originally had some very different characters that were ultimately cut from the final version. This includes Pokemon like Gallade, Heracross, Chespin, Keldeo, Meloetta, and even Krogunk, all of who did not make the final game. Finally, we have footage from the scrapped Pokemon Rodeo game. Now this footage shows Pokemon Rodeo, a game where players could actually capture and ride various Pokemon in like a wild 3D environment. Pretty dynamic mechanics and had interesting game features, but ultimately it was scrapped for reasons that we don't know. Next up, we have concept art. Now this is leaked concept art from Pokemon X and Y showing the early design of the Kalos power plant, which is a more industrial futuristic look. Also we have this image, which is of a space station. Next is unused Gen 6 designs. So this concept art shows an unused cassowary Pokemon design that they didn't name or give a type to, and it was ultimately cut from the final roster. We also have another unused design of a flamingo Pokemon. Now this is, again, we have the information in English, however they never assigned this Pokemon a name, and this one they didn't even give pre-evolutions to. We also have a leak which shows that AZ was supposed to be Sycamore's ancestor. He shared a similar appearance with Sycamore before the concept was changed to a much taller man. After this, we have concept art from X and Y which shows various windmills in a town, which I'm unclear which the town is, but let me know in the comments down below if it's a town from the game or if this is purely just concept art. Anyway, the rest of the leaks are honestly just minor details. For example, storyboards about the X and Y fly animations like this one, and again thousands of more minor details about the games. However, in this video I've covered the major leaks to come out of the Pokemon hack. If you want an extended video instead of summary like this one, please like and subscribe and let me know down below. Thanks for watching.